Let's get her rocking here. Look at the live chat. Everybody, no intro, yes, and a little bit of a delay on the start time, but welcome back to the AJC. Technical difficulties, all right, but we got it sorted out. Basically, what it came down to is, yeah, my screen was choppy as hell, and we wanted to at least have it dialed in for you. I got Lou with me. Lou, how you doing, man?
Good. How's everyone doing? A little
Oh,
Saturday
man.
chaos.
Never a dull moment, eh? Never a dull moment. And Lou
Nope.
knows this, covering the news. Same with Omar, and this morning is no different, man. Omar, how you doing, man? Tank top is on.
Yeah, I started with a t-shirt, but it was too hot, so I changed to a tank top, even though it's not game day. So I'm fine, everything's fine, and ready to rock.
There you go. There you go. And we're dialed in here now, finally getting stuff sorted here. We're going to say what's up to everybody in the live chat. Take some time, then we'll get the housekeeping out of the way, and then we're going to get to the business at hand. Josh Soul is saying, finally, some closure for management, right? Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Never a dull moment. All right. We'll see what's going on. Apex saying, I can't believe Timothy Weah signing. Even as a squad player, I don't like the direction the team is heading, and we're definitely going to talk Weah. Obviously, we're going to talk Adrien Rabiot. We're definitely going to talk about the latest rumors about Max Allegri. And of course, we're going to talk about just in general the Mercato, where the team's heading, the project, what's going on, finances, everything. All right. And again, everybody else that's in the video, thank you very much. We're pumped to join you guys and do a live. We wish we do so many lives through the season. We were looking at this, we were looking at numbers and whatnot. We hit like 100 hours between pre-games, watch-alongs, and post-matches in like just over 3 weeks. It's insane, and now it feels like it's just too few and far between doing them just once a week in the Mercato. But we'll see what happens. We'll try and do some more. But let's get into it, okay, everybody? Real quick, the housekeeping. Big shout out to the Juventus official fan clubs, especially those North America. All right, we are the official voice and channel of all of those fan clubs, and I dropped some news in terms of what's going down with the US tour. So if you are planning on going to Los Angeles, mainly Los Angeles, because that is where Juventus will be set up. Okay, there are many perks of joining an official fan club, but especially if you plan on being around there, because there are special events being booked that you can only get into if you are an official fan club member. So if you need to get in touch with one, reach out to us and we will put you in the right direction to get set up for that. So 7 days they are going to be camp based out of Los Angeles. The other cities, Santa Clara, where the game is at, obviously close to San Francisco, may get a training session the day before. Same with Orlando. All right, but pumped up for the U.S. tour. Big shout out to the official fan clubs. Then we've got our own merch. Hey, this just showed up yesterday, and I absolutely love this. All right, just always happy. Okay, and still enjoying it. But check out our merch. That's one way to support us. Memberships are another way. Thank you to everyone who's joined that. By the way, if you are a member, reach out. We're going to plug you in to our private WhatsApp group chat. All right. And last not least, super chat also enabled. Now, like the video, everybody, goes a long way. First things first. Okay. We're going to crack things first. UEFA bans. I want to talk about this. And I also want to talk about sources. Okay. Because everybody, the talk right now is just about sources this, sources that. And people are like, well, hey, your source got wrong with Allegri and whatnot. Well, apparently still in question. But it's not always, it's easy to pick out the last thing that doesn't end up happening and say your source was wrong. But it's more than just that. What you have to understand about sources is they make claims based on what they're gathering and everything. And I've always been upfront about this, okay? Because just recently, I also posted again that this was, I think, 2 days ago. You guys can probably refresh my memory. 2 days ago, I posted, my source still thinks Max Allegri is not going to be the coach. This was 2 days ago I posted that. We all know what's going on this morning. But he stays strong. I don't necessarily believe it. And we were talking today, like, we'll believe it when we see the official, hey, thank you, Max, post from the Juventus official admin. But what it's about is everything else that they're giving us. And just take that. So he was right about the disarray at the top. Calvo, Allegri, and then Mirko and Romeo back that up. He was right about that. He made his claim based on hey, slim to none chance Max Allegri remains, based on everything he's hearing from the players. Players not necessarily being happy. The disarray between Calvo, who had just been brought in by Elkan, and Max Allegri in that friction, he made his claim. If it doesn't end up happening, but everything else he was right on. Conte, he gave you 3 names. Conte, Tudor, Spalletti, in who he thought, and he said he would bank on Conte. Conte showed up to the stadium 3 days after that, okay, and actually did have a meeting about the job, and that was also confirmed by strong sources. We saw him in the stadium. We saw him having dinner. The photos were there and video was there and whatnot, but it was also brought to everyone's attention 2 weeks later that, yeah, they spoke about the position. It's not always about that end product because they make their claims. And also, if I wanted to be right, because I have no skin in the game. I'm not a journalist. I don't care if I'm wrong. Like, it makes no difference to me. And if I wanted to do that, why 2 days ago would I present to you with all the evidence we're seeing? Milik resigning, potentially Rabiot resigning, and Max coming back for a meeting, whatnot. Why would I present to you that my source still believes that Max Allegri isn't going to be the coach if it was about being right? It's about, and it always has been, and I'm telling you all so that you're aware, it's always been about sharing with you what I'm hearing, okay, out of the sources from Turin. It's not about right or wrong. I don't care. And you can call me wrong for whatever. Oh, your source is wrong. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is, he's been incredibly accurate with how much has happened down the line, and we've all seen it, right, Lou? Omer, like, we've seen it. We've seen the accuracy. It's just that last one that he staked to hasn't panned out. But I just wanted to clarify that for the sources. Hey, it's not about right or wrong for us. It's just about sharing what I'm hearing. But we'll get your guys' thoughts real quick, and then we're going to get into start off with Weah and whatnot. But quickly on the sources thing.
I just wanted to say about like just sources in general, Lafon, Tutto Sport, any journalist, right? Like you said, like some of them tell the truth, some of them don't. Some are less credible, some are more credible. But we had a post yesterday about the Timothy Weah news, and if you go all the way back, Fabina Della Valle, who now everyone says isn't credible because she was so wrong about the Max Allegri, maybe stay, maybe not. I mean, who knows if that's right or wrong now with the recent news. She reported that in November for Gazzetta, which is, very much deemed to be a lot of BS amongst fans. Tutto Sport had it in January, and, people say don't believe the papers, don't write that. We're not saying that you have to believe all of these sources, but you should, take it with a grain of salt, take it with some interest. Of course, it holds more weight if Romeo Agresti and, Mirko Di Natale or, Nico Sierra or Fabrizio Romano were posting it, but you just never know with some of these sources, right? So you should always read it, put it in the back of your mind. Hey, maybe that's out there. If they're hearing it, there's got to be something out there, right? Either a player's agent's putting that out there, somebody's giving them that rumor. You just never know. And for example, the Mercato it's chaos, right? Like Timothy Weah got broke, like the news of him signing by Di Marzio, who really hasn't been right about Juventus since since way before the Ronaldo news. Excuse me. So it's just take everything with a grain of salt is my point here. And I'll just give you all those examples to put out there is that, even the best journalists can be wrong sometimes. Even the worst journalists can be right sometimes. You never know.
Yeah.
And we gotta remember in the transfer market things are happening like that. I mean, 3 days ago, Sandro Tonali was a Milan player. There was one reporter with 3,000 followers who said that he's on his way to Newcastle and it's almost done. Everyone gave him shit for it. 1 day later, less than 24 hours, everyone reported it. 2 days later, he's a new Newcastle player. So
Mhm.
everything happens in the blink of an eye, and things change all the time. So take that into consideration. Sometimes the club is just checking to see if there's an option to buy someone. It doesn't mean they're going all in, so it's not reported by the major credible guys, but you are poking around and asking. And that's some of the messages we are getting. Some of the news are just Juve, testing the waters to see if there's something to talk about with players.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we're going to kick things off with Timothy Weah, who appears to be pretty much a done deal. 2 million a year he will earn, 5-year deal. Deal said to be getting close somewhere between 10 and 12 million euros. And we've got, again, flip sides of this one already split in the live chat and whatnot. We'll get your guys' thoughts, and we're going to start this off with Lou. Lou, Timothy Weah, your thoughts on this signing?
Uh, I'm a big fan of this signing. I think Timothy Weah is a really interesting player. And I do want to clarify some things here. So, a lot of people look at his stats and they use that as criticism, and then they call him a striker, which he's never actually been a striker. He's always kind of played as like a traditional right mid, fullback position. Last year, in 29 caps, half of those were at fullback, if you can count both right and left back. So, he's built like a Juan Cuadrado type of player. Yes, he's not going to give you 20 goals next season, but as a squad player, he's extremely useful. And I think that's a huge key for us, going forward, is that he can play a multitude of positions. I'm not saying that he's going to come in and be a world beater, but people get lost in like the big name players. Big name players, like, they help you win titles, but you really win titles from the contribution of your squad players, the depth, the players that play in those, midweek games on Wednesday nights, because you're playing Bologna away and you just played Inter at the weekend, right? I mean, how many times we can think of countless examples, players like Giaccherini or Paduan gave us a 10 out of 10 performance at left back or center mid when they weren't supposed to be there, just in a one-off. That's the kind of player we're signing.
Yeah.
He's an international player. Lille had a really great project last year. They were in the Champions League. He played at the World Cup. He's an experienced player for his age. I think people got to relax. And we're also getting him for 12 mil on 2 million a year wages. Like, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Omer, your thoughts on the Timothy Weah signing?
I like the deal. I'm not going to judge a 23-year-old and saying he's not going to make it ever. He could be a surprise. He could be a flop. It's an option, but I am willing for that price to examine the option. And maybe, it's a bargain there. Sometimes you just don't see it. How many Napoli fans were hyped about Kvaratskhelia or Lobotka when they signed, or Zielinski?
Yeah.
Usually you get players and you don't know what to expect from them.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a world beater at Lille at 23. Big shock. I'm not surprised. He's really versatile, like Lou said, both left and right, from right back to right wing back to right midfielder to right winger. He can play all those positions on both sides. That's
Yeah.
good for 12 million. And if there's anyone out in the market that you can get for less and who's evidently better, shoot the names out. I would like to hear them because I don't know of anyone in that range of prices.
Yeah. And that's the big thing, right? I mean, for me, it's 10 to 12 mil, but it's also that versatility. Okay. So we're going to get help coverage. And I mean, look what happened this past season. You had Quadrado, DeCilio goes down. You had nobody. You literally had nobody that you could put in that role. I understand the stats don't show, and everybody's gonna say no. His main position is like a forward, the winger there, whatnot, and he couldn't break through at Lille, and that's why they played him at the outside back position. Listen, at the end of the day, for Juventus, some of the things that are important to us, I think the pros outweigh the cons on this move because he is still so young, okay? But he's got tremendous pace, which we could use. We really could use. He's versatile. He is cheap. So 10 to 12 million. We're all talking about money, but then we forget about the money when we're making these kinds of signings. But it's the reality. The other thing is, he's a utility player. He's not our 1A signing. And that's where I think the disconnect is. If you're expecting Weah to come in and should we sell Chiesa, which we will talk about, and Di Maria outgoing, and you're looking at him as the direct replacement, I think that's where you're going to be upset and disappointed. But if you're looking at a guy like Juan Cuadrado who's leaving, okay, who could fill up and down the right, and then you look at this, and then you think about the complaint that many have had for Juan Cuadrado for a long time, which was, hey, why are we paying a utility guy this much money? Well, now you've got yourself a utility guy who could potentially give you big upside, and you're only paying him $2 million, which is what I expect in a utility role. It makes sense.
Yeah,
Of course, it
stats
makes sense.
stats too could be like very misleading. Like for example, I would be curious because I keep seeing, and not to call shout out to Apex who's going off in the live chat. We really like that, but he is pulling a stat. It's over 140 games with 28 goals and 10 assists. Do you know how many goals Chiesa had in 158 games when we signed him? Want to take a stab at it?
8.
No, it's more than that. But Omar,
12.
Take a stab.
33 with Fiorentina in 5 seasons.
5 seasons? How many games? 150?
158.
33 goals. Okay.
It's not exactly crazy numbers. And Chiesa's extremely talented. Now, I'm not saying Timothy Weah will be Federico Chiesa, but stats can mislead. You know, you can't write off a player because of stats if you've never seen him play. That's all I'm saying. You got to give these guys a fair shot, right?
If you go by stats, you wouldn't sign Iniesta. You wouldn't sign 23-year-old Xavi. I mean, just look at what he brings to the team. Cuadrado became a right back at what, 32, 33? I mean, there's tons of room to grow and improve. A lot is depending on the manager, on the team around him, and not only down to him, but it is an option I'm willing to, bet on and take a chance. You don't always hit the mark with signings, but when you do, it's great.
Here's the thing, too, that I think gets lost a lot of the time is when Juve makes a deal. For many years now, I've been talking about this, and it's that back end that gets lost in the fold. And what I mean by that is we've been stuck with so many dead end moves. This is a wage that if it didn't work out, you're not stuck. Somebody will come along and want, like, say in 2 years, okay, you know what? This project ain't working. Like, we're going to move Weah, whatnot. That price is fine. And you're not going to get stuck. And you could potentially have a guy that's on your hands that maybe does go up in value because you've got him at such a bargain. Like, I'm telling you, it's not the be-all, end-all. People are making the Weah move out to be way more than what it needs to be. But for this role, for a utility, a squad role, that's the kind of numbers you want to see. And that's a good indication of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and also too, people like they get this idea that great players can only play in one position. Like if you're a striker, you have to play striker, otherwise you stink. I mean, we've seen how many rotational players come in and play different positions. I mean, Marquisio was a god at the 8 position, right? He was incredible there. But then as he got older, he played in the Pirlo role. I mean, players move positions. It happens, right? Like, it's not all the time you're locked down to one position. I mean, Man City just won the freaking Champions League with John Stones as the controlling midfielder. It happens, right? Like players move around.
I can't help but go back to remember the time that Thierry Henry could not break through as his position with Juventus. And we all know what happened. He was playing fullback with Juventus. We all know what happened there, right? It's not the be-all, end-all. Again, the deal makes sense for Juventus. Rabiot Renewal. Now this one. So, 1 year renewal at the same wage. However, reports came out after saying that Juve did up the offer or just had a better offer. Okay? So, here we go. A better offer, maybe, potentially. But let's just keep it for the sake of discussion, okay? At the same wages. 1 year Rabiot renewal. Omer, we're going to kick this one off with you. What are your thoughts on this?
horrible. I see no upside to it. The only upside is if they renew him and immediately sell him to someone else for a price and not lose him for free. Otherwise, I don't see any reason to renew him, especially at his salary, which was already relatively high. Maybe even the highest in the squad. I am not sure. I don't know. He's been good in the past season. I don't think we're going anywhere. I think he discovered himself that he wasn't as good as he thought because the offers just don't come in from all those United and Liverpool and everyone he thought would guarantee him 10 million, 11 million, whatever he wants. I see no upside to it. I rather we move forward with someone else. I never liked him. I thank him for what he did in the past season. Congrats, been a revelation. But still, we gotta move on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lou.
you guys all know how I feel about this topic. I mean, it's puke worthy. But
So Jeremiah is in our chat, and he finally received his kit.
Yeah,
And he
congrats,
did
Jeremiah.
choose the Rabiot 25 kit. But it was good seeing you with the kit there, Jeremiah. I know you're in the live chat there. Came in a bit late. Glad it
looked good on
made
you,
it to you.
Jeremiah.
But
It looked good on you.
yeah.
Hot garbage. But listen, all right. First off, I'd just like to address the Rabiot fans in my mentions who kept tagging me in posts linking him to Bayern Munich and Real Madrid and Barcelona and Manchester City. But apparently none of those teams thought he was good enough because he's taking a 1-year offer at the same salary, allegedly, from Juventus. To me, this move from the club, it just reeks pathetic. It's like this player, like, he clearly doesn't want to be here. He only wants to be here because he has no other option, right? And he's waiting till the last possible second to accept that deal.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of what you think about him as your best midfielder last year or not, I mean, he's going to leave again in the year if he gets the offer he wants. He's basically saying, okay, I'll wait 1 more year before I say farewell. It's not exactly like a great move for Juventus. Need pieces they can build on for the future, right? And if this player is like really good again next year and then he just leaves, you go 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Like it doesn't matter who it is, right? I mean, I would say the same thing about if it was, prime Paul Pogba taking a 1 year, right? Like it reeks pathetic from the club that they're sitting here and just waiting for a player to give them a yes or no because he may or may not want to be here, in my opinion.
I'm going to get into this because I put a post out there that was very, very straight up front. And it was, for me, I don't see the benefit to Juventus in doing this. And I'm starting to get confusion about what our actual end goal is trying to be in this move because it's not quite making sense. And everybody's fighting me saying that it does make sense from a financial point of view. But I'm going to argue that. I am going to argue that it still doesn't make sense. So here's how I look at it. Number one, you've got a wage, and I said this throughout the season, okay? So I will say this. I did say this through the season. The way Rabiot was playing, I said if you're Juventus, I would personally consider it at the same wage, a renewal for Rabiot. Consider. So when you consider something, that's taking all things into account, okay? So the season has ended. We know what we're losing as far as resources go, okay? So we know what we've lost in terms of resources financially from European play and whatnot. UEFA bans and everything like that. I will get into that a little bit later on the show too. We'll talk about UEFA bans. But with that, and now you're going to renew him on a 1 year, okay? All of a sudden, the Rabiot renewal has turned into a stopgap, everybody, okay? So, a stopgap. Where would it make more sense to use a stopgap, okay? Would it be center back, full back, potentially getting a 1A winger for a guy like Di Maria who's leaving? Or a midfield that's already flooded and you have more guys that you're trying to sell that are a midfield player that you already own. So while everybody's making the shout about finances, for me, okay, and performance aside, because That's not even a guarantee Rabiot does what he did last year again. And that's based on track record. It might not happen. But for shits and giggles, even if it does, there's a chance that if all guys were firing and Pogba was healthy, that you might go with like a Pogba, Locatelli, and Fagioli anyways. But you're dumping a 1 year on a Rabiot. You've got Zakaria, but everybody wants to sell him on or whatever, but you already own him. You already own him. You just take, what are we doing? So we're tight on money, but we're going to drop it on Rabiot. And are we going to suffer in some of these other positions? Because as much as I like the Parisi signing, if I could get a stronger stopgap in that position, I might use it there. Or I would definitely use it up front on a team that is struggling to score goals. So I'd make that argument. And
you have. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you have to look at the bigger picture, right? If you're rebuilding a project, you need to build on foundations that are going to be here in the future. It would be one thing if Rabiot signed a deal and then it was like option to sign permanently, barring UCL football, right? But it's not that. It's just literally a one-off. It's a player who's just like, hey, I'm going to use you till you get a better offer. That's not a strong indication of the future. Like, what kind of message does that send to fans, to players? It's literally like, hey, we're just going to sign this player. We're going to make him our highest paid player for 1 year so he can F off to another team after this. It's just,
yeah,
it's a pathetic look, in my opinion. And it's not like he's 34 years old. He's 29. Like,
I wouldn't say it's like, I wouldn't say it's pathetic. Like, I'm looking at it, it's not making sense. If you're going to use the financial struggles, I don't understand when there's pieces that you have that you can use. And if Rovella's coming back into the mix too, between Fagioli can play anywhere in the midfield. Okay? I think we can agree on that. He could play anywhere in the midfield. You've got Locatelli. Locatelli can even swing out if he has to in there. But I honestly think we'd have the strength in a two-man pivot. And the whole thing with Zakaria showed, even playing next to Rabiot, two-man pivot. That was his thing too. Solid. We have solutions in-house which make the most sense for us financially. Now everybody's bringing up SMS immediately. That's another reason. Like, if you're telling me just because of, well, we'd have to spend to bring him in, whatnot, but he'd also be less wages than Rabiot. His wages are less. And a good amount less. And you'd lock him in for a few years. Obviously, you wouldn't see the resale there, but resale is something they have to consider too. The Rabiot 1 year deal for me is very, very strange, okay? And Lou talked about foundations, building, and it's starting to be like, what are we necessarily trying to do here? And this is where it's one of those moves that I'm kind of combating here. Like, in the midfield is not the position I think we would need a stopgap type deal. That's just me. And hey, sure, with the Allegri thing, the two-man pivot, whatever, but he has done it. Obviously, we had different rosters and whatnot, but is what it is. Besides the point. A stopgap at the midfield. The Rabiot renewal has become a stopgap. My argument is, why stopgap in the middle of the pitch? It's the least spot. I would think we need one.
It's where we have the most young talent, too. It's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, look, unlike Allegri, the reasoning for keeping Rabiot does have, some truth to it. The reasoning are good. He was healthy all season. He was our best midfielder all season, statistically. So you can make the argument, and I would accept it. But here's my thing. First of all, it's a money issue, and based off reports, Chiesa wants out because they don't want to pay him. So if we renew Rabiot for his salary, but letting Chiesa go and don't want to raise his salary, then there's no project. It's just maybe Allegri wants his player to stay, and that's it. I would rather let him go and renew Chiesa for whatever he wants than doing the opposite. The other thing is, well, I forgot. I had another
It's
good
all
reason.
good. It's all good. We're gonna.
Oh, one of the guys said we are going to bring a new midfielder regardless if Rabiot signs or not. So I don't see how that is going to work out. Something's got to give. It will either be Fagioli, Rovella, Pogba, or the new guy,
And
or
this is
Locatelli.
another thing that doesn't quite make sense. Another reason why on a 1 year, if you are gonna bring in another midfielder, you have a lot of midfielders as it stands. It's really leaning towards not making sense for me. It really is. And everybody that's talking Allegri in here, we are going to get to Allegri. We haven't got to Allegri just yet. Okay, we will. But that's another reason why it doesn't quite make sense. Again, for me, it's the positional. It's the positional thing. But whatever. If it happens, it happens. But for me, it's just not making sense.
This comes to something that I think it was Romeo Agressi that spoke about this either on his YouTube or on one of those live panels with all the journalists. It may not have been Romeo, but it was either him or Mirko. I can't remember which one. Shout out to both of them; they're the best. But friends of the show too. But they were talking about how when Giuntoli gets hired, his first year, they expect him to kind of just like not blow things up, but observe, see what he wants to keep, and then get rid of everything come 2024, not make too many drastic changes. And I know we're going to get in the Mercato or things like that, but this move kind of strikes me as that. It's like almost like damage control. It's like, let's not destroy anything until we can look at it properly for a year, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with. Like, it's smart in one sense, but that's why you have people like Mana or Allegri or Scanavino. Those guys were there for the last 6 months of the year, right? Like, they were around to see that period where, as terrible as Juventus his last season was for Juventus, the last 6 months of the year was more positive than the first 6 months, right? So you had a good feel for what that team could be, where the strengths were, where the weaknesses were. You would hope that the management that carried over, the people like Mana, could help that transitional period. I just worry about a team that's just trying to stay afloat for one more season and then bank on 2024 when they're probably facing no Europe this season. It's risky. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not a good look for your rebuild to just be like, hey, we're transitioning for a year.
Yeah, I hear you. And I see the comment in here also, this one. So I was not impressed with Rovella in his last game in the under-21 national team. If you think that Rovella will solve our midfield, you are so wrong. Listen, I will never make a judgment on a player on one game, okay? How are we going to ignore the season? He had the season he had for one game with the U21s on the national side. No, I'm not going to do that. The thing is, too, he would not be coming in as a savior and solution and whatnot. Look, if you think Rovella is not ready for Juventus, I would challenge that strongly. And the other thing, again, is making sense of what we are trying to do. We have dropped down, okay, significantly. It's time to build it up and build so with pillars. And this goes back to the Rabiot signing. We need pillars. If all of a sudden we're looking at 1 year stopgap deals and we are ready to ship out one of the players that is potentially supposed to be one of those pillars in Federico Chiesa, I am definitely going to question the intentions of this club. And when you throw at me that it's finances and we're supposed to accept it, I am also going to challenge that because, look, if this club wants to splash around money, they can, and they can do it with anybody out there when it comes to Exort, okay? We've taken bonds before. They could do it again. It's all about figuring out what Elkin is actually endgame is trying to do, and the talks of sales are still out there, partial and full. We don't know what's going to happen. But if we're just going to always resort to this finances, the Rabiot move still contradicts that, okay? And if you're going to start raising a fuss about these young guys and not want to give these young guys a chance, well, which way do you want it? You want to go out and splash on the big names that are going to come in and be saviors? Well, you can't do that. So are you going to have some patience and let these young guys that could be those big guys in a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, and let them work together? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Juve's got to make a decision. The biggest thing for me is balance, okay? And now we're going to kind of talk about the Chiesa potential sale and what we are thinking about the Mercato, what you want to see. What are your expectations, everybody, of the Mercato? For me, the expectation is I want to see a team that's balanced at the end of the Mercato, that made moves that make sense financially as well, but the balance has to be there. We can't keep going in, year out, and settling with the roster we have. It needs to be balanced. And that is again why I say I don't think the position we choose for a stopgap, if we make that renewal, makes sense to the balance of the roster. That's my thing. Now, we will get into Chiesa, but real quick, everybody in the live chat, what's your expectations for the Mercato? That's mine, essentially, this season. Lou, what's yours?
I see this as a very rebuilding summer. So I think that Juventus, they need to, like you said, I agree with the bring bounce to the squad part, but I think that Juventus need to bring players in that can build our foundation for the next 4 to 5 years. Like you need not just stopgap players that can help shape younger players, but you also need younger players with talent that you will invest in, that you will play to help build the new Juventus with the next 3 to 5 years in mind. Players like SMS do kind of count for that because they are a short-term solution to help, some of these younger guys carry over, right? As Fagioli and Moretti and Rovella develop, you bring in a more experienced player to help them, get over that line, to teach them, how to play in big competitions. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for the Mercato is, can we build a foundation that shapes this Juventus for the next couple years? Much like we did in 11-12, where we brought in a bunch of really talented, players, a couple players who were out of favor, with some of their clubs. But we could squeeze the last couple years out of them to set that foundation for what the future could be. Regardless if you think Allegri is long-term or not, or whether he's even going to stay next year, the club needs to take steps to build their future and their foundation. Because I really do think, looking at the rest of the league, and I've said this in our chat, the rest of the league is in deep peril. I think that Inter has $6 million in debt. Napoli have a new coach. Who knows what that's going to look like next year? Milan just sold their best, one of their most promising young players. They seem to be on fire. Roma and Lazio apparently can't make any moves. So Juventus, if they can build their foundations and they get the right players in there, they can at least get back into the top 4 or at least make a push for something to build for the future, because I think Serie A is right there for the taking.
Yeah. Omer, your thoughts on your expectations for this Mercato?
Okay, so what Lou said about the teams, yeah, it doesn't look good for the rest of Serie A either. I don't think we're any different. I think no one is safe from big money. Tonali was just a player that wanted to spend his whole career at Milan, and even he is not there anymore. So they might sell Terra Hernandez too. I mean, no one is safe. Lazio signed Berardi, I believe. Roma actually made some good signings. At least I wish we would have signed Indica. But I look ahead to the season we have. What do we have this season? Are we playing Champions League? No. To win Serie A, do you need top tier players in every position? Also no. And Napoli proved that, and Milan proved that. So I want Juve to make, sensible decisions, so we have enough depth to compete. I don't know if we're going to be in the Conference League or not, but we don't need top players to win that. We actually need a top manager, in my opinion, and I don't think Max is it. But everything is going around what happens with Max. That's the catalyst for every decision we make. In my opinion, at least, some of those signings will have to depend on the new manager. I would say no to some players if Allegri is still the coach, and I'd say no to other players if Conte is the coach.
Yeah.
So until we get that thing cleared out, I don't know really what to expect from Juve this summer.
Listen,
just don't end up with Keane and Milik as your strikers for the next season. That's my thing.
So, and even in taking this into account, Inter have huge depths in their accounts, yet they're still on lookout for top players. But listen, their Mercato has to balance out. You're talking about, I don't even know, using them as an example, they've got almost like 858 million in debt. Their owner took over 1 billion loan out or something he's paying like 15% interest on it. Like, if they pick top players, their roster's getting depleted just the same. So all it is an exchange. In, out, in, out. At the end of the day, zero is what their Mercato has to balance out at. It is what it is. Like, I just don't see the point in using them as any type of example here and whatnot. And I'm not sure how it is. Okay, 10% interest. Thank you, John. John's the man, everyone, by the way. Okay. President of Juve Official Fan Club Toronto and head of all the North American fan clubs. Awesome having in here. But I can't use them really as an example. For Juventus, again, stopgaps. Do it at the positions we need. I want to bring this question up. This is from friend of the channels as well. He's usually in here in live chats. I don't see him today. And yes, 10% is still outrageous. Locatelli still outrageous on an over 1 billion loan there. Good enough to fight for the Scudetto. Okay, and this was perfect segue as Lou was talking about Serie A being up for grabs and whatnot. This is potentially what we could be looking at. Okay. Szczesny, Danilo, Gatti, Bremer, Cambiaso, maybe Parisi, Fagioli, Locatelli, Pogba, let's say Chiesa, Vlahovic remain, and Weah. Is that good enough to win Serie A?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you run through that again?
Szczesny in goal. Your back line, Danilo, Gatti, Bremer, Cambiaso. Midfield, Fagioli, Locatelli, Pogba. Up top, Weah, Vlahovic, Chiesa.
I think that back line would need more work, but I think the rest of that is good enough to win the league. I mean, if all those players are healthy, like Paul Pogba, if he's healthy, is the best player in Serie A. That's not even close.
Yeah,
I don't see why we could say, after watching the Milan side win, and even what we thought of a Napoli side before everyone was picking them outside, I don't see why this team couldn't compete for Scudetto.
Napoli won the league by points with Mario Rui is their starting left back.
Yeah, like I don't see why this roster couldn't compete for a Scudetto.
It can, but it needs also service from the other teams. I mean, the teams who have won in the past couple of years have taken advantage of other teams doing bad. Milan won it with what? 5 important players? Who was it? Magnan, Kessié, Theo, Tomori, Tonali, Leao, Giroud.
Nobody's running away from Serie A. Like, Serie A isn't running away from Juventus.
I think the age of dynasties in Serie A is over. We're going to get a lot of, just different champions every year. Maybe a 2-year, 3-year stint for some clubs, but eventually they're all going to get depleted out of their best players if nothing changes.
Black Mamba's getting a little bit of heat in the live chat for this one, that he thinks Rovella's better than Fagioli. I did say this on the show, and I think we might have it snipped or whatever, but I think Rovella's actually got the highest ceiling out of all our youngsters, to be honest.
I've said that since we signed him.
I don't know. I need to see more of him.
That was a player that it was...
Fun one from Faraz here. Unpopular opinion, he'd give away Rovella in favor of the Sergei Milinkovic-Savic move. Guys, your thoughts on that one, would you?
No, because then we're either signing Thomas Partey or another Paredes deal. Rovella is coming in to be in rotation with Locatelli as a central defensive midfielder. We got to remember that we don't have anyone else on our roster, maybe Barrenechea, that can fill in for that role. Would you be happy with going in with Locatelli, Barrenechea into next season, or will you feel more confident with Locatelli, Rovella? Or do you want some Partey Paredes type of player?
I wouldn't give Rovella in the deal. I've been very vocal about that. Tomas would give away Rovella for an Allegri leave, though. So there you go. We are going to get to Allegri, everybody. Chiesa sale. We got to talk about Chiesa and the potential to sell him. And guys, I'm gonna lead this one on, okay? And I'm just gonna say this, okay? This is not my opinion, okay? Because my opinion is he needs to be one of the pillars that we move forward with. Some have concerns about his fitness, the knee, and everything like that. I don't actually have those concerns with him. I think he looks very, very good. I think there's a certain role for him that he needs to play. But I will say this. If the club, behind the scenes, there's some going on, and they do not want to renew Federico Chiesa, this is the summer to move him. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. If they have no desire to move forward with Chiesa which I actually believe they should, and they should lock him in. But if they have no desire to, then this is the summer to move him. But if you're trying to tell me, like the rumors suggest, where Juve is starting at 60 million euros, there is no way I see Tonali worth 70 million and Chiesa worth less than Tonali. I don't see it. I do not see it. So even if it comes down to dropping our pants at the sake of selling them, even if you don't, no way. Stand your damn ground. If Tonali gets 70 mil, I expect at least 85 to 90 for Chiesa minimum. We can easily say he's not the 120 guy coming out of the Euros anymore. Like everybody's like, oh, he's 120, 110. Okay, take a hit back with the injury and everything like that, but there's no way on earth he's less than Tonali in my mind. Not having it. But, hey, from a logical standpoint, if they don't want to renew for whatever reasons, this is the summer to do it. But I would hate to see it, and I don't want to see it. Guys, how do you feel about the news of Chiesa and them taking offers and whatnot?
I'm very passionate on the subject, and there's a lot to unpack here. First off, I want to address the injury thing. People need to understand how difficult it is to not play for 10 months and then come back during the busiest time of the season. Juventus played 3 games every week for 6 months. That is not easy for someone who's trying to build their fitness. We saw it with Vlahovic for a little bit. We saw it, with countless players. You pick up some muscle injuries, you're rebuilding. That's very normal for someone who had just come back from an ACL. It takes about 2 years to recover from that. I mean, you guys were around for this, but I think fans would want to sell Del Piero if they saw his knee injury, like in the 2000s. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you have to understand the context of how difficult that is to come back at the time that they did. And I actually do think, while there are some frustrations with the amount Chiesa played this year, I think Juventus handled that in the right regard, which is to not start him every game, to give him some time to recover in the long-term project. So I just want to get that out of the way first, because I think that this, he's not going to be the same player, he isn't the same player, is a little dramatic. All right. Let's see this year. If he's not the same player this year, maybe I'll buy into that. But let's give it some time. All right. They're very difficult injuries to recover from. That aside, this goes for any Juventus player. And I said this before, I can't stress this enough. If Juventus is rebuilding this project, they need players who are committed to this project in the long term. Whether that's 1 year back in the top 4 or that's 2 to 3 years back in the top 4, you need a long-term commitment from all these players. That goes for Vlahovic, that goes for Rabiot, that goes for anyone. It goes for Fagioli, it goes for Ravella, it goes for Moretti, right? If you're not committed to Juventus in the long term, you don't belong here. It doesn't matter who you are. So if behind the scenes, like you said, Juventus can't strike a deal with him, or maybe he doesn't want to renew, you have to consider all options, right? If Juventus win the league and, Chiesa hates his role next year, who are you going to pick? It's just...
I disagree with that statement. I think it's correct to 2005. There are no loyalties. There are no long-term projects and committed players. There are very few. How many are committed and you can safely say they'll stay at Juve even if we miss Champions League next season? I can name 2. Locatelli, Fagioli. That's it. That's it. Tonali took a pay cut, said he wanted to remain in Milan for the rest of his career, and he's not there anymore.
That's different though. He's not expiring in 2 years. He's there because the club has terrible finances. I'm not talking about the club selling him. I'm talking about from the player's perspective. If you're going to invest, people want to make this guy. Listen, I love Chiesa.
That's the point. It doesn't matter anymore what the player wants.
I'd pay him long term. If I was in charge, I'd sign him to a long term deal. That's just me. But I'm saying if you're the club, objectively, it's like Dybala, right? If you know you can't bring him back in 2025 because negotiations are tough, or it doesn't look like you'll be able to meet those negotiations and demands, you're gonna let him walk for free. That's partially how we got into this mess. All options for every player are on the table. Every player, there's options.
With that, I agree.
But you just need. And when I say long-term commitment, you need someone who says, "Hey, I'm taking a 4-year deal at this price point. Here's what I'm leaving at." That's what I mean. You can't just be like, it can't be stopgap where it's like, "Hey, we'll meet again in a year and see where we're at," where it doesn't benefit Juventus, where they have to sell them like Lazio, you have to sell Milinkovic-Savic for half the price because we waited too long to do so. Juventus, like they need to look at the bigger picture here, and it's like, hey, are you with us or are you not? I mean, I know loyalty in football isn't to where it once was, but when I make that, I'm just saying it's like, hey, like we need you to sign another deal. The last part of this I want to say is I don't think anyone in this current squad deserves to be making $7 million a year. That goes for everyone. I wouldn't pay Val $7 million he's owed. Not with our
So let me make my position clear. I would not let Chiesa leave. If he wants 8 million, pay him 8 million. I believe he's worth it, especially in the long term. I don't agree with him being miles better than Tonali. I think Tonali is a very, very good player with a very promising future, and he was a part of a pretty, not so good Milan side, and still managed to win the title and take them to the Champions League semifinals. I wouldn't downplay him. I think him and Chiesa are both
I think he's a good midfielder,
the same level.
I think he's a good midfielder. I'm not paying 70 mil for him. I'm not paying 70 mil for Tonali and giving him 9 mil a year.
You don't have an ownership who's worth 200 billion.
Yeah, there's a difference. The teams that are linked with Chiesa right now, this is also like really frustrating in the Mercato. Why is it all the teams that are just like bargain hustlers are coming for Juventus players? West Ham, Liverpool notoriously are bargain hustlers. That's what they do, right? Occasionally they buy like one player for 90 million, they usually overpay for it, and the rest they underpay for it.
Another thing I missed out on the Rabiot thing too is, does anybody factor in the fact that he's come back to that base deal? He's got no better offers, everybody. This is your best Mezzala around whatever in a position we don't need. We're stopgapping because he's got nothing better. Should tell you a lot too. Tonali is a good midfielder. He's not a 70 mil guy. He's not. The fact that they have the money to splash that is besides the point. But he's not a 70 mil player. I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly the point. If they can ask for 70 million for Tonali, Juve can ask for 70 million for Chiesa and not compromise. Because the early numbers, what was it, 35, 40? That's laughable. Absolutely
but even 60 is for me. Like, the fact that he had that knee injury and whatnot doesn't take him down half the price. If he was a 120 guy before, he's coming back. The fact is that our guys are not showcased well enough. And that is kind of something that contradicts the Allegri supporters out there that say how you play football doesn't matter. It kind of does. It kind of does.
100%.
Because you got to showcase your talent. And like I said, at the end of the day, here we are in a season where they want to throw, we got 3 third place sul campo, which I've been very, very vocal about, is not an achievement. Okay? Not an achievement. However, the fact of our key guys not being our key guys affects us when this comes around and you want to sell. Nobody cares. And nobody's giving you what you want or what you expect because you've done a shitty job of showcasing them. And that's the reality.
I agree. It's true. And I think in the larger picture, like with where Juventus is now, regardless if a bond is coming or if investors are coming, it's just very hard for me to justify anyone with the current financial restraints making more than $7 million a season. Listen, Chiesa can be our highest paid player at 6, but 7 is a big stretch for any player in this team.
Yeah.
You know,
I
it
I would
is.
pay him 8. I would pay him 8. Okay, so
I'm
let me
fine.
throw
I'm
in a
fine with.
curveball.
I'm
Listen,
fine with Chiesa making
if
8, but
he
that's also
definitely
based on
earning-
the standard we set, right? With these other prices and whatnot. But one of the things with Juve too is when you're getting these next up and guys. So we've tried to do this in the past few years. We went out, we got Delict. He had a massive, massive wage, and then you go out, you get your Vlahovic and whatnot, massive, massive wage. It's like they still have to work to that. It shouldn't just be like immediately. It's got to make
That's what
sense.
I'm saying. It's just
It's like, and Juve, to be honest, in my personal opinion, needs to get back down to the way they used to operate, which was honestly their splashes being somewhere around 50 mil, and let these guys work and grind and earn and whatnot. And they need to start throwing more incentives in their bonus structures and whatever. And let's not talk about automatic renewals and whatnot, but shit like that has to go away completely. A restructuring, right? But there's work to be done. But Tonali, that thing, and Federico Chiesa, like for me, I can so from a business standpoint, like we've kind of said, if you're not going to commit to them, which we all seem to disagree with, but if you're not going to commit to them, this is the summer to do it. But do not do it for the sake of doing it and take such a hit. Stand your goddamn ground and at least get paid.
I agree, Berto, what you just mentioned about how Juventus used to do business, right? The Serie A, where it was, when we were winning Scudettos with Conte and Allegri, and where it is now, obviously it's not at the right. It's not where it used to be, right? We can all agree to that. But Juventus had a formula where they were getting around, not being able to compete with the best teams in Europe, and having success with that. And that was their foundation for a while. They got a little lost there at the end, but the big thing I think essentially is you need to get back to your roots here, and that's making players earn their wages, right? And not just handing out large salaries to high paid players or spending 80
But how
mil.
can you do that? How can you do that when you're competing with the Premier League and the Saudi money, and they're offering
Technically,
millions
we're
and
not competing
millions to
with
mediocre
everyone
players?
in Europe. I mean,
You can't compete with that. But if Sassuolo can ask for 40 million for Fratesi, for Scamacca, for all these guys, Chiesa is worth 80 million minimum,
Yeah.
bare minimum.
I agree with that, but I'm saying, but I don't. I think I understand there's a financial gap, but I don't think that necessarily makes an excuse for not building a proper team. I saw Juventus win 9 league titles. Half of those they were selling their best players for a lot of money and replacing them with
That's
better
true.
emerging talent. Right? We
That's
went
true.
to 2 Champions League finals. We were into the 2 best teams of the decade. Right? With very minimum budget. It can be done. All right. And Juventus is a little bit different than the other clubs in Serie A. Remember, we actually own our stadium. We actually make a profit from our stadium, right? We're a tad bit different than the other teams around Serie A, and we have Exor, which is a very good ownership group, assuming they stay in charge and the team's not sold. Whatever, foreign investment might help them. I don't know,
Now,
but
go ahead, Lou. Finish up.
I just want to finish up saying that that if Juventus play their cards right and they make smart moves financially, I know easier said than done. This team can rebuild and can rebuild properly. I truly believe that. I know there's a gap. I know that teams like Aston Villa are throwing 100 million around, but just because Aston Villa can throw 100 million at a player doesn't mean that player necessarily is going to join Aston Villa.
Yeah.
That's all.
Berto Baum. Igor Tudor is your new Juventus coach. Boom. Why? Because he just followed me on Twitter.
That's awesome.
Okay. Official Igor Tudor account. Yeah, obviously it's not him, whatnot, but we're going to have some fun here. We're going to talk about the whole Max Allegri thing all of a sudden today, picking up steam with the Saudi thing. Look, we talked about it before and whatnot, and the whole Allegri thing, and I'm not getting into this again. We've all decided, like we've said it, we've all said our piece on Max Allegri, what we personally feel. All we're going to do from this point on is talk about the news and what it is. Right now, today, obviously, everybody has seen it. Saudi Arabia comes in again. Apparently, he's reconsidering. ESPN, Ekram, a few of these accounts that aren't the big ones. None of the big three have said a thing on it and whatnot, okay? And I share with you guys everything that my source tells me, okay? And my source was adamant since the beginning of June about Giuntoli. And the latest news today from Skira is that on June 30th, he's most likely going to be unveiled as the new sporting director at Juventus. My source remained strong when everybody said we were going to wait a year, and he said, no, it's done deal. It's going to be a summer. I have the tweets that back it up because I was putting it out there. I tell you guys again, I don't care about being right or wrong. It makes no difference to me. I'm not a journalist. I'm just going to share with you what I hear. Take it for what it is. Allegri, he still feels there's some uncertainty there. Romeo Agresti, 3 days ago, said there's still chaos at Juve. And to be honest, it's disheartening to hear. It really is. It's disheartening to hear that even if you've made a decision, that this is still floating around and it's going around as a fan, because the theory is that Calvo obviously wanted him out. We know Calvo's plan. It's been laid out, and my source backed it all up, and everybody else backed it up out there. There's a lot of good, strong sources. Calvo wanted Conte, he wanted Giuntoli, and he wanted 2 ex-players in the mix. That's how he seed getting a management team structure and moving from there. Even if you lose the vote, and Max Allegri is now the guy that's going to remain for this season, to continuously hear that there's still this disarray behind the scenes, and there's still half or whatever the number is of people that just don't have the faith and are not believing in Max, is incredibly disheartening to feel as a fan. Because at the end of the day, you guys got to be professionals, and somebody's got to come out here and give some goddamn fan service and just say, you know what? No, 1000% Max Allegri is going to be here this year. The rumors, nonsense. He will be your coach this season. And just call it for what it is. End the nonsense out there. At some point, a little bit of fan service goes a long way. You know, and we talked about this before. We said, like, hey, even if you wanted Max to go, we asked this question. We brought it up and said, how would you feel if the club came out and was honest about it and say, we think we need to put our finances elsewhere at the moment, and we think there was a lot of circumstances that went down that affected Max's performance and whatnot, and we want to go this third year, focus our finances elsewhere, and give him one more season to see what we can do without these circumstances that were out of his control. I would feel a lot better with that approach, to be honest. That's just me. A little bit of fan service. It's not a lot.
Yeah, we've
It doesn't
talked
take
about
much
it.
to do
We
it.
said,
At
we
least
said
there's
we
the
need transparency.
place.
It's transparency, and it's just like, okay, now we know, now we get it. But
This goes back to something that we discuss a lot in the chat, and what we were talking about earlier with the Mercato, and like it's almost like they're just trying to like preserve like what they had from last year. So Scandavino did speak on this.
I don't think he did, though. All he said was, it's always been Max, and yeah, we're going with Max. But he didn't address any of the stuff that was going on, because he also started that whole thing with a lie, saying that it's always been Max. No, because we knew from all the strong sources that they were looking at other coaches and having interviews. So he started that off with a lie, and that's my problem with the transparency.
I also think on again, like the larger picture, where the point I was trying to make is, and it comes back to what Scandavino was saying, it's kind of just like, hey, Max is the guy last year, he's the guy this year. There's no truth. It's not like, hey, like we believe in this for like the next 2 to 3 years. Like this is the project. Last year when Aniele, Carabini, and Rivabene were in charge, like they were talking about project and long term. When I hear this management speak, it's almost like they're just like, they're trying to do damage control. They're trying to preserve one more year before they decide whether they're going to blow things up or sell to another investor or what they're going to do. But all this feels like temporarily. It's like they're trying to like keep things afloat until they can blow it up or do something with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the more
Okay,
likes,
More likes and it'll happen, everybody. Let's go.
okay.
Yeah,
So to
go ahead.
be completely honest, Juve have never been that transparent anyway. I mean, we all know about Nedved's kisses of death. I wouldn't take anything they say for granted, but I do have a question for you. For the live chat too. You have tons of problem, like you said, disarray behind the scenes. So let's take like four, maybe five things that needs to be fixed, and I want you to rank them in order. What would you do first? Then what's next, and so on. So let's say the five things are stadium. I mean, bringing back the fans, changing manager, fixing J Medical, fixing the finances, or fixing the locker room. How would you rank those five?
I think you start with the management because John, they mentioned a good point. Like these guys, like I've said this for since they really taken over. They're intern management. They're not. They're like they're there until they could hand it over to someone who's properly going to run things. They're there to do damage control. Until people are brought in, Gentoli being the first step, but until people are brought in to actually run the club, it's just going to be this keep things afloat until we can bring people in to actually run the club. So it starts there. You can't bring back the fans. You can't bring in players. You can't fix the locker room until you have the proper management with a vision to rebuild it, the rest of the club. It starts at the top. Andrea Agnelli, for however he finished, in the Super League and some of the moves at the end got a little whack, was a very solid president. There was a vision that he started with and built on. Same with Beppe Marotta and, Paratici when he was the understudy of Marotta and Nedved. They had a clear vision for the club. It starts with the people at the top. If you get that right, you're gold.
Yeah. So we got some thoughts out here. Anthony Trimble, management, coach, team, J Medical. Dell saying management, coach, first without a doubt. They cascade in any order from there. Skanga, management, coach, locker room, stadium, J Medical. I see J Medical being tied into the coach because usually he's got his own training staff and whatnot, and it kind of plays a part. So I would put those kind of the same. Stadium atmosphere, definitely, I think, should go in part with management because it's what their vision is and what they see as one of the problem areas and whatnot. And I honestly, like we saw the reports yesterday break through about Calvo wanting to put things right with certain ultra group and then some ultra groups coming out and saying, no, that's not true. I don't think you even need the ultras to correct it, to be honest. But that's just me. We saw last year some of the ultras being in there trying to intimidate others to remain silent. Do you need the ultras? Do you need the ultras to correct the atmosphere? It helps with the organization of the chanting and the songs and whatnot, but I mean, Jesus Christ, I could sing all of them and I know all of them. I'm not an ultra. So get the flags going, get the banners going. Whatever, man. Give these guys some flares when they walk in the door. I don't know. Just pick up the goddamn atmosphere. Do something. But yeah, honestly, I agree. Management is where it needs to start. Management, go from there. And then I think they figure out coach, if Max is their guy, whatever. But it's a good point that they're kind of interim, right? But as far as Allegri goes, hey, it hasn't come out from any of the big guys yet, okay? But again, in keeping with everything up front and just letting you guys know what I hear and whatnot, I'll let you know what I hear. And what it was is that the theory is when Max had returned, okay, because he had this little break and then he's got another vacation he's on now. We all saw the video of him sleeping on the beach there. Kind of looked like watching myself watch some of our games last season. But anyways, okay, we saw that. He's on vacation. The theory was when he had come back and that whole meeting that was about the Mercato and everything and moves and everything like that, that everybody said, yeah, they just had a good meeting. It was positive. It was about me. It was more making a stand of where Juve stood and where he stood and what was going on. And for him to go wait and then make a decision, essentially. Um, and what kind of ties into that is that Juve doesn't want to burn everything up and pay him in full. Probably made one last move for a severance. He's got another offer out there and whatnot, obviously, because the offers were true and validated by Romeo and Mirko. Everybody said, yeah, he's got these offers. And there's also a theory about why they're coming at him and potential partial buy-in to Juventus. There's a lot of stuff going on being said behind the scenes, but it wasn't necessarily all Mercato related. But when you look at these moves, and again, why am I telling you this? I don't care about being right or wrong. It's not about right or wrong. It's what I hear. But I agree with all of you, and it's why I've pushed back on my source saying I'm not quite buying it on Allegri, okay? Just because Managerial has come in, and that seems to be, a Max thing. Said I met with Max, but did Juventus bring him in? Did Juventus bring him in and Max was there? And yeah, of course, I met with Max. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of thoughts. That Giuntoli also had something to do with Managerial and whatnot. The Rabiot renewal would be a strong indication, I think, of Max Allegri remaining as well, and even Milik. So there's all these things, right? But hey, my source remains strong on a lot of things, and he remains strong on the Giuntoli thing. Who knows? I personally do not see Max leaving. That's just me. Guys, do you think Max is... I know Anthony's still hanging on by a thread. I'm hanging on by a thread, everybody, but I think he's staying. Guys, does anybody feel like he's not staying? Omer? Lou?
No,
I told you, I think he's 100% not staying. That's what I think.
You think he's not staying?
Yeah.
Yeah, Omer's been pretty adamant about that. I'm at to update my scale. Tony and I have been running at a percentage scale. To update my scale, I'm at 93% that he stays.
93%, yeah. I believe that's what's going to go down here. Last, certainly not least, guys, talk a little bit about the UEFA bans and whatnot, because essentially I'm hearing that Juve and UEFA have found a deal, and they're going to find a deal. And the rumors behind it are that Juve has some intel and some evidence against Inter, okay, that also ties in the FIGC that would grossly affect financial fair play. The league doesn't want it to get out and whatnot, so also push to help with Juve not getting a ban. So we'll see what happens. Today, reported by, again, a weak source that Juve is going to get bans and whatnot. But again, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Hey, I doubt Max is staying, so there you go. I doubt stuff. It happens. Bremer got you a kit. Max Allegri stays, gets you 10. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. See what happens.
I want to add, before we move to a new topic, I just want to add, Albanese just tweeted 5 minutes ago that an official offer from Saudi Arabia has arrived for Max Allegri, 30 million season. Now we're waiting for his answer.
Yeah. And it's Albanese is working his way up, good guy and whatnot, but I prefer to wait for Schira, Romeo, and Mirko. But Albanese, he's working his way. He's working his way. Di Marzio out of nowhere, after years, it seems like he's just on it all of a sudden with Juve, and he hasn't been for years. So it is what it is. We'll see what happens. We're going to wrap up with some Storm the Barn questions, okay? We got time for just a few. But real quick, do you guys have anything to add for questions, whatnot, that we might not have got into that you want? Oh, yeah, Iling Jr.
Yeah, well, before Iling Jr., I did want to expand on the UEFA ban. The interesting thing from Tutto Sport today, so they've been the one that have kind of talked about it the most lately, but there was a notion that, like you said, Berto, like your source, that Juventus and UEFA were going to come to a plea deal. Juventus doesn't want to play in the Conference League. They think it's kind of a burden. UEFA would be willing to sacrifice financial fair play to ban them from it. It's a win-win for both parties. The one problem today is, though, that if we were banned from Europe for a year, we'd fall out of the top 8 rankings for UEFA, and we could miss the Club World Cup, which I know sounds dumb to a lot of fans, but it is in America, and there's probably a lot of revenue to gain from that. So that is That's kind of, I don't know how much because it's fairly new, but that is something to add on the UEFA ban. Personally, I don't really care. It just seems like an annoyance to me. So, let's focus on winning the league. But I just thought I would add that. We could
In
go into Iling
in
Jr.
keeping with the Saudi Arabia thing, there's gonna be alternatives available to Juventus, and Saudi Arabia might look at that opportunity when that kind of rumor broke. There's gonna be a major opportunity for Saudi Arabia to pounce on it. They're doing like this thing's legit. This thing is real. They've done it to golf. They've done it to boxing. Like they're getting into football. And the Prem heads are losing their shit and they look like absolute hypocrites out there, which they are, and they're always out of touch. Europe's got to figure it out and they're going to have to come together because if they don't, they will fall. But if Juve and UEFA wants to ban Juve, and even Barca for that matter, there is going to be an opportunity for some cash out in playing in some type of tournament or whatnot, and they'll be able to find ways to fill their pockets still, regardless of competition. Saudi's going to look to take advantage of something like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if that plays into the whole UEFA thing and whatnot. And Europe's going to have to ban it. Can they do it? Hey, that's a whole different story and whole different discussion because for me, the Italians can't even come together just to save their own league. Now asking them to get with all of Europe and whatever for the greater good, who knows what's going to happen. But the Saudi thing is legit and it's a legit threat to European football, like for real.
I I told you a couple months ago here on the podcast that I see the European football as some sort of product that they're fighting over with America, with all the money that there is in America, because Europe are all of Europe are in debts and no economy is actually doing great, and both the American sports and the Arab sports, Saudi Arabia, whoever have money to spare, and they're fighting for this product that is European football right now, and those are the ownerships we see, either Arabs or from the US, and someone is going to win, but it can go both ways. So far, Italy has been more on the American side of things with the ownerships and stuff, with Roma, with Atalanta, and some others. I think Udinese too. But they are going to play their hand even in Italy. It's a matter of time, in my opinion, because obviously you can't leave it to Italy to make their league profitable and sustain it money wise. Not the teams, not FIGC, not the government, not anyone, and they are sniffing blood and they are going to go all in, and it's fine. Football is for everyone. It's not a European thing. Everyone
Yeah.
can take part, and I have no issues with it. I do have issues with it, but it's not because anyone is anything. It's just that's football today,
If
and we have
UEFA
to
was
get used
smart,
to it.
if UEFA was smart, when teams were looking at this potential Super League and whatnot, and it came down to the money, and ultimately, yeah, you're an organizer, okay, that's all you are, and you've got nothing, no stake in the game, whatever, and you're taking the majority and whatnot. It literally comes down to money. So go to these teams and say, okay, you're looking at Super League wise, so you can take the majority of the money. Get these people to invest, and then your money gets bigger. Like, you guys want more money out of the tournament? Okay, great. Bring me these investors. Bring me the JP Morgan. Bring me the A22 sports or whatnot. And let's get together and let's make Champions League way more intense and way more on the line. And you guys but instead it's just this fight. And UEFA, it's always been that way. It's always been this power struggle.
I don't think that
But
they under.
there
I
there
don't.
is a flip side to it, because Italy is not a brand that I would buy if I wanted to invest in some sort of competition, because there are a lot of issues there. There's a lot of problems. You don't want to handle racism all the time when nothing is done about it. You don't want fans going haywire in streets of other cities, and you have to be the face of that and manage that. That's not something attractive for outside investors. Italy needs to fix that if they want money invested in their league from other countries. We have a
Yeah,
problem here.
no, I'm not talking about the Italian league. I'm talking about UEFA. I'm talking about European football because this is bigger
I don't
now.
expect anyone
Because
from
now
anything from them.
it's European football. Like it's bigger. It's the Saudis coming in, and like I said, if Europe doesn't get it together, like all the leagues are gonna suffer. And the Premiership, while they're getting nervous about it now, they need to realize they need these other leagues to be strong too, and the top clubs out of those other teams to be strong as well. It's not just them. Now they care because it finally fucking hit them. But the truth of the matter is these other leagues and these other top clubs have been struggling for a while. And it's not like I'm shitting on the Prem or whatever. I've always said, they've done a great job of, I think it's a hype train, but they do a great job.
They
Props to them for doing what they've done. Okay. But now where it's at, they got to get together. But in Italy, we know what it's like in Italy. We've laid it out all the time. They will rather fight each other and watch the other suffer than do what's greater for the greater good and work together. It's the way it is. It's the way it is.
Real quick to unpack what both of you guys said, like UEFA, I don't think understands how great of a competition they sit on. The Champions League, next to the World Cup. I mean, in some cases, I actually think that the Champions League is more entertaining than the World Cup as a whole because you get that those two-legged ties, right? You get like the madness that is like a Real Madrid comeback against Man City last year. You get like this drama that plays out for the whole year. It's stretched out, right? And you have to wait a month for your team to play between quarterfinals and semifinals. There's all this like build up to it, right? It's just it's this crazy competition. And if they would accept, kind of these outside offers from A22 or JP Morgan, they could really make this competition an even better version of what it is now, which is this great, incredible product. They just don't. Omar, to your point about the Italian league, there was a period where, and I live in the U.S., I'm U.S. based for those who don't know, where around the Ronaldo signing, I would go out and I would see people who would come up to me while I was wearing a Juventus shirt and be like, "Oh, I'm a Milan fan. I want to watch Serie A. Serie A is taking off." And COVID kind of wrecked all that. But there was a point where it felt like it was coming back, where it was almost like it was suitable to people. So I do think that there is interest there. But like you said, like they really need to stop penalizing these teams. And it's not just Juventus fans who say this either. I mean, during the capital gains case and the Plus Valenza case, when that news was first breaking, ADL was publicly stating about how difficult it is to get anything done, in Italian government, with the Italian government. He was saying, that these teams, they make so much money for these cities and they get little to no compensation back. I thought that those words were very interesting. They've kind of haunted me throughout this whole year, is that, it's very easy for American and foreign Saudi investors to go and look at a product like England and be like, yeah, I can flip this in 2 or 3 years if I put enough money into it, because you can, because they're not getting in the way of that product, but in Italy, they're doing whatever they can to get in the way of it.
Yes. So I'll make a last point.
Probably gone.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. There was a point in time where Italy was on the rise and you could have taken advantage of that scenario. But when you have UEFA involved, they're a joke. And just an example from the past couple of days, they have disqualified Osasuna from the Conference League from something that happened in 2013.
Oh, it's a joke.
2013. It's a joke. So I don't trust UEFA with anything. And Osasuna put out a statement, UEFA, strong with the weak and weak with the strong. And I think that's spot on from Osasuna.
Yeah.
That's why I don't expect anything from UEFA to benefit the entire European football. Their interest lies where the money lies, and right now it's the EPL.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
Mark, I think you're mistaken. It's not the comparison. It was saying Champions League is second to World Cup, which I actually believe it is. Like, I don't think you're going to get another competition other than another international one that's next to it. So for clubs, Champions League is the biggest club attraction, period.
Clarify my
Because
statement.
it happens every 4 years.
Yeah,
I wasn't
saying that more people are attracted to the Champions League than the World Cup. I was just saying purely as a competition yearly, when you have, clubs from all around the world who don't really play very much together. It happens every year. They play a two-legged knockout. It's absolute chaos.
Yeah.
Like the World Cup is the biggest competition in the world. That's no question. I'm just saying in terms of like how much fun the competition can be, the Champions League gives it a really good run. It's a very entertaining competition.
For
And there's
clubs,
some
it
rivalries
is
that come.
the biggest for clubs.
Yeah.
Period. Like,
But UEFA sees most of the money. That's where Juve's issue
that's the
lied
issue.
when they
Yes.
started with the Super League, because they don't see enough money from a competition that takes a lot of their time and energy every season.
Couple store in
And I
the
don't think that's
barns.
going to change.
Real quick, wrapping up here. YFG, which position on the right do you guys think Weah will play? If we're playing 3-5-2, he'll be a wing back. If we're playing in a four-man back, I see him up as a winger.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, nothing to add. I agree.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how we play, which is still in question. I don't know how everybody came to terms that Max is already playing 3-5-2, considering he's been on a beach napping. But that was the latest news, so I'm not buying into the whole 3-5-2 again still, but regardless. Nader coming in here with Storm the Barn. Sports washing money will add further controversy to an already controversial football environment in Italy. I don't necessarily.
Football is controversy, though. It's literally a brand based on controversy. It's crazy Europeans and Americans and Saudis fighting each other for money power. It's chaos.
Yeah, like Italy's got so much controversy. I don't think sports washing money is going to add further controversy in Italy. I mean, look at what they're doing. Look at what's been going on this year. Big eye opener. What did we push all year? Amici di Nessuno. You see it in our background here. Like, it was us against the world, and the media really painted the picture of what it's like. And then what do you get? You get the league coming out saying after this season and what went down, points will not be taken anymore during championships. Hey, thank you.
Of course it won't.
Thanks for that.
Of course it won't.
Thanks for that. Of course it was.
Nice.
If I can add something,
because you now can't do that to other things. You've done it to you, but that's what you wanted. That's how you absolve yourself from answering the questions. Wait,
it's
what about
hilarious.
the other things that were
It's so predictable, and it's fucking hilarious that
that's why no one will invest money.
It's a joke.
Exactly
it's a joke.
If I can add like one thing to like this, like the marketability of like the Premier League or like Serie A, one thing that the Premier League does super well, this comes into the money washing question, is, for example, Luton County was just promoted for like the first time in like 20 years, right? And already you're seeing like on social media and Sky Sports and the news, they're painting the story of Luton City, the stadiums in the suburb, and it's, you can look through the stadium through people's homes, and they're painting this like romantic story of a club that's never been there.
Yeah,
Serie A doesn't do that well.
Yeah.
They have these teams that get promoted after 30 some years. Like Monza should have been a story that everyone talked about, right? Venezia, like they tried to push it. They did it with the American part of like the Serie A coverage, but nothing else. Then Italy has these tales of romanticism on football clubs that go back hundreds of years, but they don't push or sell that. They don't do that very well.
Imagine
and that's the problem.
Italians not being able to tell a story. Like, it's just weird to me. It's just weird to me that we like can't produce, like have no production value around this league. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Dells, are Weah and Castagna similar in terms of positions? No, because Weah's way more versatile, whatnot.
Yeah, and Castagna is like he's a pure fullback. Yeah, right. It's like he can play
wing back. His best years have been playing right wing back.
One's more defensive, one's more defensive.
What's the AJC transfer window looking? Is Skang accepting the offer to the Saudis? Well, I've had to up the offer. We're trying to pay them to take him off our hands, and they're not accepting. So, is what it is. It's what it is.
Right. Daniel Lucci's been terminated.
Yeah. Mark, how do you compare Thuram with Weah? Who made the better deal? Look, everyone knows how I feel about Thuram. I would have loved Thuram. Like, I was shouting for Thuram if there was any possibility for Juve. I'm actually still surprised with the Inter thing. And again, their situation is dire. Like if we're dire, they're dire. So they're still gonna have to empty out, and they're paying him what 6.5 is what was reported, whatnot. But if it was pound for pound between the two, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm taking Thuram, like for sure. That's me.
With all due respect, I hate this type of question because here's the thing: Thuram is a great player, right? He's a better player than Weah, but we have freaking Costa, Chiesa, and Iling Jr. already there. Weah is a squad player to back up those players and help us in certain situations. It's not He's not there to be like
Like
he's not
like
there,
Thuram is going there to be a main.
he's going
Like
there to be a main guy. It's
yeah,
contextually, Mark. Thank you for your question. Love your support. Your comments have been great. It's just that I hate it when fans take these moves and they compare them because you have to look at it from perspective. Like Turan is going there to be a starter for them. They needed that position. We needed some backups. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. Omer, anything to add here as we wrap up?
Look, the Ram stats are better. He's a more established player, but he did do that in the Bundesliga, and goals are just flowing there. So I don't take their stats, too seriously. I think he's a decent player. Still couldn't save Mönchengladbach. They didn't have such a good season. It needs context. This question needs context. You can't directly answer because one player is going to play for Inzaghi and Inter, and one's going to play for Allegri and Juve. I can't compare the two. Maybe after a season, we'll have better knowledge of and can compare it better.
And anytime you ask the question, I wanted to wrap up on this: who made the better deal? Time will tell. Did Juve end up if Weah outdoes all expectations at 2 million and Thuram doesn't quite fill his expectations at 6.5, then you will know who had made the better deal. Time will always tell what the better deal is. But pound for pound, player for player, yeah. Thuram would be the leader in that pound for pound. But the better deal will always be told in hindsight, all right? But on that note, everybody, you guys have been fantastic. Like the video, all right? We've had a ton of you with us today, and it's great. We want to do more lives through the off season and whatnot. But let's see. What do we got? Before we wrap up, percentage-wise, what would you say Giuntoli to Juve is done? 99.9. All right. So reports today say June 30th. Let's see. 2 days after the gaffer's birthday. Coming up, everybody. Buy me something nice. Okay, everyone in the live chat. I'll drop my address in the comment section. Send those gifts over.
You guys have been for the kids. That's it.
There you go. You guys have been fantastic. Lou, absolute pleasure. Everybody should be sending a big thank you to Lou because, man, the news is crazy. And Omer. So essentially when Lou goes to bed, Omer just pops up and starts taking over. So these guys, it's incredible what you do. I wake up every morning and just look at my phone and say, holy shit. Because it's just bombarded, and then I obviously transfer it all to Instagram. But say a big thank you to you guys for all you do, keeping us in the loop. All right, never goes unnoticed and underappreciated. Okay, love the work you guys are doing. Keep it up, and yeah, whatever you guys need, coffee, espresso, I'll send it over to keep you guys rolling because it's coming fast and furious. It's been
we can
insane.
do a show every day. Every day we can talk for 2 hours.
Yeah. You guys in the chat, you're all awesome. Thank you so much. Again, like the video on your way out. Drop a comment after it ends. And we'll talk to you on another live coming up in a week. I do have a show probably Monday or Tuesday, an evening show. So different time, live with president of Juventus official fan club Hollywood, Matteo, who's been on the show before. We're going to talk about the U.S. tour and what's going down. A lot of cool opportunities. Again, join up with a fan club if you're not a part of one. If you need help finding one, reach out to us. And yeah, that's it. Other than that, we've got another live show coming up with some other presidents. Andrea, who's been on here before, and John Groh. And we're going to do a fandom culture giveaway, okay? So there's going to be a couple cool boxes and prizes given away for that. And jerseys, yeah, we've got some jersey giveaways coming up too. And if Max stays, you got 10 coming. So we got a lot of cool stuff coming up for you as a thank you during the off season for all the big support we've been getting this year. Okay, so thank you all. As always, tomorrow will be a daily update video, probably from the lake. Okay, but I'll be back then with another update. As always, fino alla fine, forza Juve. Take everything with a grain of salt. It's silly season. Come, let's see what gets confirmed and judge the Mercato at the end of the Mercato. All right. Take care, everybody. Ciao.